We have to remember that we have ancestors who came here and lived their entire lives in slavery. They were born into slavery. Some of them lived to be 70, 80, 90 years old. They died enslaved, right? And we have gotten to live in the moment that is the overflow of all of the victories that they didn't get. And so the idea that it will happen fast simply because we want it is also rooted in this narrative that we have about the fact that we will uniquely fight harder than they fought, rather than that we are living in the conditions that they made possible because they lived to fight another day.
Hello, beloved listeners. We have another episode of Election Time with A and B here for you today. This one is with the crunk feminist herself, Brittney Cooper, and I'm really excited. I've been catching Brittney in conversation with Rebecca Traister and others, talking about this election, talking about women with Black women, talking about being a professor who has students she's trying to protect who have been involved in the encampments, like just walking this line that many of us are walking right now, being a Black woman who doesn't want genocide or fascism, and how she's navigating that. So I wanted her to come on and I wanted y'all to hear how intelligent and nuanced some of these perspectives are, and just how much, there's a lot happening at the level of the heart in this conversation. And I particularly wanted someone to speak who is looking at how Black women are participating in the voting process with a longer lens. Everyone I've brought into this series is someone who looks at organizing through a longer lens than just this moment, both looking back at our patterns and looking forward at what is possible depending on how we move through this moment. So I hope it's a conversation that you learned from, as I did, and that, you send some gratitude to Dr. Cooper for the space that she continuously holds under great attack with love for our people. All right, enjoy.
Hi, darling. Hi, Brittney Cooper.
How are you?
Gosh. Thank you so much I'm good. I'm finally warm. I just did like a photo shoot that someone was like, we're going to put you in a river for this photo shoot. I was like, awesome. That sounded so good when I said yes, and it was warm outside, and it's like taking a turn to fall. So I was like, I'm in this river. I was just like, I really respect models and people who are like, I'm just here. This is my job to be in this river. So I have finally warmed myself back up, and I feel good.
I love it.
And I'm really grateful that you're down to come on and have some election time conversation with me. Basically, this series emerged because I was like, whoa, what are we going to do? Like panicked. And then I was like, well, I know a lot of really intelligent folks, and why don't I bring them on to have some of these conversations with me? And each one has been grounding in a different way and elucidating in a different way for me. And you are someone who I deeply respect. And I've seen you and Becca going around and having some conversations around what this moment is. And I'm like, yes, that's really helpful. And so I thought maybe you could come on here and shine a little light on your perspective. Part of what I keep trying to help people understand is like, we're all sitting at different vantage points on what this moment is. And each one is actually a pretty legitimate vantage point. And most of the people I talk to are both anti-fascist and anti-genocide and trying to figure out what to do for as many people as possible right now. And just trying to figure out, so our conversation might cover strategy, it might cover communications, it might cover the heart, we'll see what comes up. So sound good? Okay, good. So the first question is, how are you?
Well, this is a bright spot in my day. Just, hearing from you. I often think of you, and I think of this moment that I met you when we were tabling around Black Lives Matter. and I got
Yes.
to see you in your facilitator bag. And there was like a moment when I was like popping off and I was basically veering off, and you just did that Adrian thing that's like,
I was like,
okay, let's just bring it
let's
in, right?
bring all that power right over here.
Yeah. And I deeply appreciated it because it didn't feel dismissive. It just felt like let's ground in together so that we
Yeah.
can, do this work together. And so it's been, it's a grounding moment for me sometimes when I just remember like, okay, bring it back to center.
Yeah.
Um, you know, what I am is I want to say a little bit about the day that I've had. So,
Yeah.
the broad picture of my life is that I'm in deep grief because I lost my mother last year.
Yeah.
And she was my favorite person on the planet and
Yeah.
my kind of bright light. And we live
Mm.
in this pace where people want you to just be okay and get back to your life and go back to work and be on.
But that's your mommy. Like,
And
you
to
know.
know me is to know that, like, I'm an only child. I was raised by my mother. It was me and her against the
Oh,
world.
wow.
My,
Yeah.
so it's a world shifting loss.
Yes.
And so every day I'm having to use all my tools to sort of like be okay.
That's
Um,
right. That's right. I'm sorry you fought your mommy.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, and, today was representative of the set of things I'm worried about. So literally in the course of this day, it's like I received harassing emails for a conversation that I did months ago on TV, and this guy has been harassing me and my whole departmental faculty every few days for months.
Okay.
Um, and so I had to like talk to the IT people about how one addresses that. And
Hmm.
then, the university where I work put together a series of really draconian measures to punish students for having an encampment last spring.
Hmm.
And so today, like as we speak, we're having this Dress for Success event, and Dress for Success is like this nonprofit that helps women who need like professional clothes for interviews.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the Students for Justice in Palestine wanted to do an action today, and so the police literally set up barricades, took IDs, and are like harassing these kids, as we speak, and because
Yeah.
basically the university has criminalized their right to protest, right?
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
so that's the day. It's like on the one hand, I've got the like racist, sexist dude who's harassing folks. I've got, I'm teaching a large lecture and I have, some things going on where it's not clear. You know, you have to be very careful in this moment with students, recording
Yeah.
devices, all of these sorts of
Yeah.
things. And then,
Oh,
we have young people on campus that I care deeply about, and
yeah.
about, and don't want the cops sort of coming after these brown kids, right? These
So
Muslim kids, and that's happening.
plus the undercurrent of grief, and yeah, I hear all that.
Yeah.
I appreciate you shedding light on just all the pieces. So much of why I wanted to do this as a set of conversations was because I'm like, I don't know anyone who is a one-dimensional person only dealing with one thing right now.
That's
Everyone
right.
I know is in some grief and some doubt and question and some defensiveness over
Yes.
attacks that are already unfolding, some
Yes.
fear, wise fear, I think, about the future,
Yeah.
regardless of what happens in the next few months. And
Yeah.
all of that's concurrent.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, how do we flock with all that divergent emotional energy?
Yeah.
Um, so, you kind of set us in the right direction for this next question. Grace Lee Boggs was one of my mentors,
Mm.
and she used to always ask us, we would come visit her, and she would sit in her little armchair with her blanket, and she would be like, what time is it on the clock of the universe? What time is it on the clock of the world? And I find myself returning to that question often because I can get very caught up in today, this moment right now,
Yeah.
and get very like myopic, very locked in.
Yeah.
And whenever I ask myself that question, it immediately broadens me out to like, okay,
Yeah.
wait, big picture, what time is it? I'd love to
Yeah.
hear your
Yeah.
thoughts, some of your thoughts on what time it is.
Yeah. I think a lot about this as well. And I have been helped by listening to Indigenous comrades who have said to
Hmm.
me, like, hey, the world didn't start when white people took over the planet. And
Exactly.
this, and so if we think about the world in the long view in the same way that Grace Lee Boggs did, then you realize that this moment is really a blip in history. So even if we look at like the calculations of the clock, the Boggs clock, it's
Yeah.
like, look, colonialism as a project, if we think of it as like a 500, about 50-year project, it's really only about 11 minutes old. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Which
Right.
is to say that I think that we're in what I like to call, and what I tell myself about the project of whiteness, a very violent but ultimately merely inconvenient interruption of a long-standing world building project that existed before whiteness as a project showed up, and that will exist after whiteness as a project ends. We stretch out time, and then we get to think about whiteness as this very violent, but ultimately really inconvenient interruption in this world making project that began long before this thing with whiteness started and will be here afterward, right? And some years ago I really caused a great controversy on the internet because I said that, in a lot of the death threats that I still deal with today are white folks who think that I'm calling for their extinction, right? And I'm saying the sort of ideology that says that we get to treat the world as a playground that is an imperial playground, and we go around and we sort of take land and try to own it and own people and own own the sort of natural resources of the planet, in
Yeah.
service of money, is the thing that whiteness is implicated in, that I think will be ultimately an inconvenient interruption, because we're learning that it's not a sustainable way to be. And that's very different from sort of like an investment in saying that white people will, go extinct. I don't have any investment in that, just in the ideology that produces this kind of set of relations with each other.
Yeah. I think the same thing. I often say that it's like we're not trying to get rid of the people. We're trying to get rid of these ideas that like function as prisons and function as harm systems to actually all of us.
That's right.
Um, okay, beautiful. So that
Yeah.
feels very clear. I want to deepen in just a little bit more on this moment because we're in this election
Mm.
um, passage portal, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and as someone who thinks about these things every day, all day, we wake up with this stuff in our minds. There's this weird window where all of a sudden it's like now everyone is looking at how do things work? What is the injustice and what do we do about it? And we've been socialized to think elections are the answer to how do we fix this?
Yeah.
And so we're getting this portal where suddenly everyone's looking at the election and everyone's fighting with each other about that. And
Yeah.
I always get so like, this is not how we actually do politics. Like
Yeah.
this is the cherry on top of either a good or bad political system. But
Yeah.
if we had a very functional democracy, then the presidency wouldn't matter nearly as much, right?
Yeah.
But because we're in narrative play, right? So I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you a little bit about what time it is on the clock of the world there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the ways I think I've grown, and I think I've shocked by, is when I was a young person, I used to say, oh, my principles matter more to me than people. Right. And I thought that that was really wise, because I thought it meant that I wouldn't be swayed by folks and by personalities. Right. And that I would stay kind of clear about what was right, no matter who showed up and what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And you couldn't, at 20, at 30, I really thought that was the right position. At
Yeah.
43, knocking on 44, I'm like, oh no, it's people over politics, it's relationships all day long, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um and I think I'm very surprised by arriving at that moment. But I think that part of what, not just this election, when we came into 2024, I made a set of commitments to myself around, like, we're keeping it quiet this year. We're not getting all on social media and doing the whole thing that I did every year prior, because every election year since about 2012, because I lost friends in prior elections. 2016 was brutal,
Yeah.
on my relationships. And I was like,
Yeah.
and it was hard because I was like, I'm fighting with people that I think are ultimately my people, like
Yeah.
folks that I have common cause with, folks who ultimately, about almost everything, I would say that we're in some level of alignment. And it was, and I am a Libra moon, so I don't actually like
Oh
conflict.
no. You're like, no, coming
I don't
together.
like it. I'm like, I like, it's like people don't know that because it's all the Sag fire, in the sun, but
Yeah.
it's like inside, I'm like, oh no, we need peace and diplomacy, and like we can figure it out and we can get along and we can find balance. And so
Hmm.
I was like, to take care of myself, I was like, oh, I don't want to fight. And I'm certainly not gonna fight people about Joe Biden. Like, why? And I really made a set of commitments that like chill out. And two things happened. One is, October 7th last year happened, and it really changed the nature of, what we demanded of this particular president. We had elected Joe Biden really as the president to get us out of the Trump COVID moment and to help us to
Yeah.
survive that. And
Yep.
then the stakes really shifted.
Yeah.
And then, now he's not in the race. And now we have this Black girl, and I'm a Black feminist. And so my whole life
Yeah.
is like all Black girl, everything.
Yeah.
Alongside a set of like radical commitments that are about freeing Palestine and around ending genocide.
Mm.
And so I find myself trying to figure out every single day how to hold all of those pieces together. Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the Black feminist of it all because I do find that that keeps being the thing where I'm like, I don't know how to stretch as far as I want to stretch in this moment but I know that it's happening within me. Like whatever it is I'm trying to hold is already happening within me where I'm like, I can acknowledge the Black girl magic moment and I'm still my anti-capitalist, post-nationalist, anti-genocide, right,
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
And I remember that happening with Obama, where I was like, oh, like I can feel the historic importance of this in the grand story and like the excitement to be alive when that's happening. But I also am like, but I disagree with, me with presidents, generally I'm like, I'm not gonna agree with you. Like I
Yeah.
like my politic is love, and love so far has not been legislatable, right? Like we have not
Yeah.
figured that out. And
No.
so when it comes to foreign policy, immigration, houselessness, like I'm like, oh, we're not building our economy and our structures around care. So it's not
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
like someone I expect to represent me. So then I'm always like, okay, well, then what's the best that can happen on this sort of sinking ship situation? Because I
Yeah.
really am like some other formation is waiting, is emerging in us. And it
Yeah.
emerges when we come together. I get really
Yeah.
excited when I'm like, look how many people are coming
Yeah.
together. The coming together is the most interesting piece to me, where I'm
Yeah.
like, how do we come together about something that we believe is good and that we believe
Yeah.
is just? And so there's a question I want to ask here. Octavia Butler is always with me. And, I feel like because I think of 2024 in some ways is like the year where like she was like, I was thinking about this year. I was thinking about
Yeah.
y'all and now, and the parable of the sower kicked off in July of
Hmm.
2024. And so I feel like one of the things she always did was try to help us understand. Like,
Yeah.
I need y'all to see it as clearly as I see where we are and what's going on right now
Yeah.
and to take it seriously. What do you wish people understood in this moment?
Hmm.
And I want to say, if you want to read your Facebook post, you straight up can read it. But like, if you have other things, but that when I saw that, I was like, Brittney, like, just like, yeah. Anyway,
Did
but
I? Oh,
yes,
was this my post? Was this my post DNC Facebook post?
I think so. It was just sort of like, do folks understand how high the stakes are? And I
Yeah.
was just like, oh yeah, like I think that's that, I keep wondering that too, as I'm just like, this is not a game. And it's also not one of those things. Like I keep having this moment where I'm like, you sitting on your couch feeling very satisfied with your individual choice is not our path to liberation right now.
Come
We have
on.
to move in groups somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
And whatever, I was like, if we want to do a big, huge, uncommitted thing, I'm down. If we want to
Yeah.
do a big, huge voter turnout thing for Kamala, I'm
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Like if the move to block fascism is a common, like what most of the people who've come on have been like block fascism and block MAGA, build
Yeah.
the left. And like
Yes.
that's been the emergent aligned location, right?
Yeah.
But what then I keep seeing is what I feel like is this other energy that's just like we're just going to yell at each other as
Each other.
individuals. And so I'm really trying to tune, just be like, if I can't see the collective effort, for me, that's the thing I keep telling people. I'm like, you can be mad at me. I don't care. Like it's not that I'm not anything in the grand scheme of this historical moment. I'm a
Yeah.
person who's feeling a feeling and wants genocide to stop, but also wants all the other justice things. So I'm really paying attention to that. But I'm like, I'm trying to talk about what collective groups of people are doing. And I was so blown away that call of 40,000 women. I was like, they're up to something and it's not simple. And it's not like I get really frustrated when I see people be so what feels like very disrespectful and anti-Black when they're like, oh, so you like genocide. Oh, so you want Trump. And I'm like, wow. So every single other part of everyone's entire thought process, career, stances, everything that all these professors I know have done to support their encampment messages, like all the other work goes out the
The
window.
window.
Wow, what is that? So that for me is I'm just sort of like, don't disrespect Black women in that way. Don't disrespect organizers. Don't disrespect people who've been doing this work for such a long time.
Yeah.
We're actually trying to hold the contradiction. And in this
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
why do all these different groups from all different political stances keep coming to the same conclusion on how to actually move through the moment?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm talking more than I wanted
No,
to.
no,
That's because
no.
I'm talking to you. I'm like, I
Yeah.
need,
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for thinking that through. That's helpful. Yeah, I have found the moment really hard because for me, this is not pre-2016 organizing conditions. I think we have to grapple with the fact that what that Trump was a response to the massive movement that we built in 2013 and 2014 post Trayvon. He is absolutely a reaction to that. And some of our failure to historicize that moment and to relocate the intervention in the summer of 2020 is the reason why we actually don't understand what Trump means. That he was this forceful pushback that we didn't all see coming because every one of us was who did justice work was already skeptical about Obama, particularly by the second term. But the one thing that Obama's presence meant was that because he wasn't a full-on fascist, we could have organizing conditions to build a movement. And so the bringing in of Trump was a way to tamp down every kind of movement. It was Kaepernick, but it was also Ferguson. It was all of the movements that sort of came out of that moment. It was the first iteration of defund. And I'm offering that history because we have a context problem in this moment that we always have, and people do it to me all the time. So if I don't put up a full-on thread about like where I do all of the things where I say, free Palestine. Genocide is abhorrent. We are funding a genocide. It is morally repugnant. It is unacceptable. We must stop. I have to say that. And then, if I don't say it in every single post, and then I say, like, but you do know, right, that like Trump and the Project 2025 guys are going to show up at the doors of professors and writers and journalists and attorneys and jail them and potentially kill them. And they're telegraphing their intentions, right, with a Supreme Court that has said that there is no rule of law when it comes to Donald Trump, that he gets to be the sort of quintessential unruly subject. And I want to be clear that what I hear when I talk about Trump or we talk about Trump, some of what people are reacting to is the fact that when they want to have a critique of the left, people shout at them about Trump and suggest to them that they want Trump. Yep. And I want to say that when I'm talking about Trump, I'm not suggesting that you want Trump. I'm saying that to not talk about him is to minimize the import of the kinds of violence and damage he can do. Yeah. And at the same time, I get the same thing. So then when I talk about genocide, when I say I'm deeply disappointed that Kamala didn't allow a Palestinian to speak at the convention, I went to the convention and spent a lot of my time there lobbying for this, right? Yeah. When I lay that part out, then folks are like, oh, so you want Trump, right? Or, or if I talk about Trump, people have said to me last week, oh, so you're fine with a genocide. And I want to know if do we use the word intersectionality and we use all of this language from Black feminism to build our movements, but in the moments when it really matters for us to apply those frameworks, we don't do a good job of it, because part of what intersectionality means is a deep acknowledgement of the way that we are caught at all the intersections of these systems, and that we're trying to figure out what it means. Like, it's one of the reasons why my written work, I've been saying more recently, like, I think we lost something when we stopped using Fran Beal's concept of double jeopardy and started talking about intersectionality, right?
Mm,
Because jeopardy is a different word, right? And even
yeah.
the, you know, in the academy, we're like, oh, they're all saying the same thing. They're not saying the same thing, right? Double jeopardy and triple jeopardy and all of those women who talked about jeopardy are really trying to remind us that we are in danger and we are in deep precarity. Um, and and I think that one of the things I worry about on the left is like us thinking that the ascension of Black people to the highest offices means that everyday Black folks aren't in danger. And one of the lessons that we needed to learn from Obama was that this is Obama was in office and he couldn't prevent a Trayvon. He couldn't prevent a Mike Brown. He couldn't prevent Tamir Rice. He couldn't prevent Sandra Bland. All of those things happened with Obama being in office. And so for me, the vote is not you vote for Kamala and all of a sudden Black people are okay. It is to not vote for her is to create a world where a Trump is a possibility. And we already know what his rhetoric does. So just his rhetoric in the debate
Yeah,
has endangered all these Haitian folk in Ohio. Like,
exactly.
you know, it's and I also want to just name that one of the things I resent, I don't resent Black people, I resent our government for, I resent our political system for, is forcing us to compare death tolls to decide which one is the way to land. I
Yeah,
resent that kind of ethical conundrum, right? Like,
yeah,
if I say I would never ever I will always act in ways to keep a Trump out of office. For instance, because in 2020, the way he managed COVID meant that we've lost 60,000 Black people, right? Including, you know, relatives and friends and people I deeply love, right?
love.
And then someone says back to me, well, what about this genocide where, you know, more than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed? And I am like, so what does solidarity require of me? You know, I don't
Yeah,
want a genocide. I want it to end. But I don't think the Palestinian folk that I know and the ones that I have listened to in Gaza, I don't hear them saying, we want to induce Black misery in order to have our own freedom. They are saying, we want to end our misery. We want to end government
yes,
induced misery.
yeah.
And, but not that we think, because how is making Black people worse off going to lead to Palestinian freedom? It's not clear to me how that works.
No, I mean, I think this has been the biggest thing for me as someone who, when I think about what post-nationalism like actually looks like in practice, for me, it always means there's more parties, there's more options, there's some other way that we structure this thing. So when people are like, well, what about this third party? What about that third party? I'm like, I they're great thinkers. There's a lot of good ideas. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, like when we come to like, could I find one of the candidates who's like, you say everything I believe? Absolutely. And I'm like, but we're in this particular eye of the needle in this moment where I'm like, if you can't actually get in office at a moment when genocide and climate catastrophe and Black safety and the borders and everything else is on the line, if you can't get yourself into a place where you can actively organize and contend for power and like be pushing, then to me, it's just not where I'm going to put my attention. Like, so for folks who are like, well, this is where I want to build, we need to build capacity for third parties. I'm like, awesome, great. If that's where you want to put your attention, go put your attention there and do your voter organizing, right?
Yeah.
For me, I'm trying to put what I'm interested in is blocking fascism and actually being able to stop the genocide from happening, which won't happen if I just have an ideological victory, right? Like
Yeah.
we need to get whatever the terrain is set as close to what we can work with as possible for me. So
Mm.
I've been really sitting with that piece because I'm like, I grew up surrounded by organizers who were like, we are changing the conditions, but
it's always been very hard to organize. It's
Yeah.
actually not easy. There's not like people celebrate you. You get assassinated if you stand up and speak about justice. If you're in a time where the thing that you're talking about has not yet become something that people agree should be just, or at least are agreed to speak on it as justice, because
Yeah.
that, that's the, I think the tricky, sticky situation of the US is people are like, we love MLK. Now I'm like, you like the idea of that, but you don't imply, there's nothing in how Black life unfolds that
Yeah.
says, oh, we're an MLK kind of country, like
Yeah.
that's right. So I think about that I'm like, what I don't want to see is all the folks who have been standing up to stop genocide now taken out. It's already happening, right? That's the other
Yeah.
part, that I keep being like, people are already being removed from their jobs. People are being removed from teaching positions. People are silenced. I speak to people every day who are some of the most powerful people I know who do not still feel like they have the capacity to speak. I feel like people don't understand the actual structure of Zionism when it comes
Yeah.
to what that silencing pressure actually looks like in
It's like,
practice. So I'm like,
yeah.
if you haven't heard from someone that you've expected to hear from, chances are that's an active silencing that's happening. So that's happening in this condition. And so if we
Yeah.
move into a condition where someone's like, all bets are off, we have no decorum, we're not trying to follow any rules, we're just gonna erase y'all.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm like, I'm like, things get worse. When I'm like, things are not getting worse, they're getting uncovered. I'm like,
Mm.
what's getting uncovered is this is the reality of our political system right now.
Yeah.
This is where we are. And all the organizers I know are like, we have to humble ourselves to the fact that this is the amount of power we currently have. We have
Yeah.
tried to stop a genocide for 11 months and have not
Yeah.
been able to. There's a reason for that because this
Yeah.
is where we are. Can we humble ourselves and be where we are and then figure out how to move
Yeah.
from there?
It's a it's a really important point because also, why is it that we think so? We have to remember that we have ancestors who came here and lived their entire lives in slavery.
Yes.
They were born into slavery. Some of them lived to be 70, 80, 90 years old. They died
That's
enslaved,
right.
right?
That's
And
right.
we have gotten to live in the moment that is the overflow of all of the victories that they didn't get.
Yes.
And so the idea that it will happen fast simply because we want it is also rooted in this narrative that we have about the fact that we will uniquely fight harder than they fought, rather than that we are living in the conditions that they made possible because they
Right.
lived to fight another day. And that
Yeah.
arrogance is, and look, and I am from a small town in the deep South where the guy that ran the KKK called my great grandmother auntie and she called him Mr. and he was 20 years younger than her.
Yeah.
That is the set of conditions that I grew up in. And so when folks are telling me that, like, look, I have the academic gloss of me is like, I respect every which way that you want to show up, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. But the country Black girl from one of the poorest states in the union that has
Yeah.
eliminated women's right to get the care they need, to eliminated birthing people's right to get the care that they
Same.
need, and has
Yeah.
decided that the 10 commandments need to hang in every classroom, right? Where all those motherfuckers are liars and cheaters and stealers and killers to begin with,
Killers.
right?
Killers.
It's
Yeah.
like that me is like, I will haul my ass into a voting
Yeah.
booth every time I have a choice for the simple fact that I get to have a say so. And I think the
Yeah.
fact that we get to have a say so is sacred and worth protecting.
Mm.
And I do think that there is one side that wants to suggest to us that we don't get to have a say so. And I think the other side is the side that wants to protect the status quo, wants to protect power, wants to protect capitalism, all of that. But
Yeah.
that side, is as slow as the movement is movable, right? Look,
Right.
I that the ability to, and here's what I mean. The benefit of growing up working class is that you build discipline and stamina for particular kinds of things.
That's right.
You live in a world where you meet unfavorable conditions every single day. And if you want more for yourself, My mama used to tell me when we lived in, and I would say to her, we lived in the projects, and my mother was like, an ambitious chick and all of this. And I would say, well, mama, how did this work for you? Right? Like, how did you?
Yeah.
And she said, oh, sometimes I just knew what I didn't want, baby. I just knew what I didn't want. She was like, I didn't
Mm.
always know what I did want, but I knew what I didn't want. And I worked against the things that I didn't want. Right.
Right.
And I was like, but I watched her eke out that existence every single day. And I
Yeah.
actually am a person that has a little bit of faith that the little move to the consistent disciplines, the willingness to keep trying again every day does make new conditions possible, just not on a timeline that feels reasonable to us in digital time, where we also think that we can look. I have
Yeah.
watched people during this election cycle all over these internets misuse the word neoliberalism. They weaponize it and they call everybody neoliberal and they show out bad.
Yep.
But one of the core ideas of neoliberalism is the idea that anything we want is merely a function of our will, and that if we have bad conditions, that it is because we haven't taken the personal responsibility to actually change the conditions. Neoliberalism has placed all of the responsibility for bad conditions on individuals. So when people suggest that we can just bend time to our will, that is a neoliberal idea, which causes us to self-blame and to say that the structures that exist actually are not acting on us in particular ways. And so this is why it irritates me when I watch folks who seem like they get it misusing words as a way to make people feel like we are all complicit in a neoliberal project. And I am like, there is nothing about neoliberalism that serves Black people well. But look, we're also being neoliberal when we continue to think that to the point of the thing you said a moment ago about people want to sit on their sofas and feel righteous, right? The desire for rightness without risk, right? The desire to watch the world crumble and say, I knew that shit was going to crumble, is this, is rooted in this kind of, it's not profits over people, but it's principles over people. And any politics and any place you land that says that you get to sacrifice whole groups of people, right, for the rightness of your principle, I don't think it's correct. I don't think it's morally right to support a genocide. So I am not thinking about my vote for Walls Harris or whatever, Harris Walls, as like those people don't matter. And, because voting, the principle is not the vote matters more than those people. Right. The principle is the vote a tool to get me to a better set of organizing conditions to produce the world I want, which is a world where we can fight back like hell against all of the genocides that are happening around the planet, or a world where on day one, the Trump administration shuts down every avenue possible for us to do that. And I feel like people got to really honestly sit with that. But the thing is, I also think that folks don't think that there's a risk with Trump, because people never expect anything but white boys. They never expect anything of them. They never hold their feet to the fire. They never hold them accountable. We're always harder on the people who are trying, always harder on the people where there's more possibility. Like, I think we can have, like, my students are harder on the professors who try to get shit right. They don't have no expectations of the folks that they dismiss. I think that Kamala is all about the US nation state project. And that means that there's only so far I can rock with her, right? For sure. Because I'm not about that project.
Yeah. And
I am also like, you said this thing about the structure of Zionism. What I saw was we pushed on the progressive left for her not to pick Josh Shapiro. We pushed for her not to do it. And she didn't do it. She picked Walls. And then we saw her like tack back to the right. And I'm like, you don't think that was because she got significant pushback after she wouldn't? go with their guy. And so
Yeah.
what becomes interesting is what are the habits of reading that we have? Because if you read from the position that your wins never matter, then you just see it as, see, they were always bullshitting us and they never intended to do right. If you read from the more generous position that pushing yields things, then what you might read is, oh, we won that. And then it was met with equal and opposite force to get her back into line, right?
Yeah. I
And
mean, I remember that was one of the biggest. I'll just say this real quick because Tarana
yeah,
Burke, a couple years ago, as I was talking to Tarana Burke, and she was like, all of this is when we win. We don't always plan for the pushback, right? We
yeah,
often don't think about the pushback. It's like when we make an advance, there's a
yeah,
massive pushback.
yeah.
And we're not always ready for that pushback. And so it's like we get knocked off our feet. Like, wait, what? They can just take the abortion away? You know?
Yeah,
You know,
and contraception, which they're coming
and
for. Active,
contraception and
like,
everything else, right? So I keep having that moment where I'm like, you know, because I'm a visionary manifest motherfucker. Okay. I'm just like, I'm gonna make it.
yes.
I'm like, even for me, I'm like, okay, but I'm a humble witch. Like I can only do so much in a given day. Like, and I, like me believing, me just believing it is not enough to make it so. I have to be willing to organize for anything I actually want to be so. And in
Yeah.
this moment, I think, I keep thinking about the art of war. I keep thinking
Mm-hmm.
about like, what is the territory we're on? And I'm like, we are downhill with a cliff at our back. And
Yeah.
we have folks who are like, run left. And I'm like, if we run left, we're still going to be downhill with the cliff at our back, but we're just going to be over there
Mm-hmm.
like is we left. And I'm like, right now we need to get as many people as possible to understand that we're downhill with the cliff at our back and we have to push up. We have to take higher ground.
Brown.
And
Mm.
and so I keep thinking, I'm like, what does higher ground mean in this time? What does
Yeah.
higher ground look like in practice in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And folks keep being like, well, she's going right. I'm like, okay, but we're going up, right?
Yeah.
And I keep trying to get people, I'm like, we just need to go. She's going to like the way I keep thinking about it is like she's just going to get more people, right? Like
Yeah.
if she's coming over here and like that's how I keep trying to frame things to her in my
Yeah.
little like when I talk to
Yeah.
Kamala, because I never do.
Yeah.
But what I'm like, all of my work is like we're trying to get all the uncommitted folks, all the Arab folks, all the Muslim folks, all the folks who are Palestinian, all the folks who are anti-Zionist Jewish people together to be like, we are a voting bloc and we're trying to organize and
Nice.
pull you on this
Yeah.
issue. Great.
Yeah.
And she's also reaching out to folks over on the right. And, she's got to get the whole broad thing, right? Because
Yeah.
we got to take higher ground than
Mm.
Trump and the Confederacy,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me, I just think,
You're a strategist and I'm learning, and you have a strategist brain. And I am like, strategy actually isn't my strong suit. I tend to just be kind of intuitive. Folks will often ask me this about my career because they're always like, well, what's the strategy? What's the master plan? And I'm like, I love the human design system too. And I'm like, oh, I'm a
yes.
projector. It's invitations for me. It is
Yeah.
aligned invitations, right?
Your invitation, I'm manifesting generator. So I'm just sort of
Oh,
like, I make the world. I was like,
see,
what else can we make?
correct. I am like, look, I'm just here to like ask us the right questions so we can try to see clearly what we got and we can,
Yeah.
and we can go forward. And part of the lessons in this moment has been recognizing. So that's why I appreciated the invitation today, because some of this has
Yeah.
been about like picking the right invitations to say the thing that needs to be said. Everyone can't hear this moment because look, I understand that people are fatigued, they're really tired of the same old same old. They also don't always believe us because for the whole of the 21st century we have been saying that this is the most important election of your lifetime. But let me offer people just one piece of historical reason for that. The reason that every election has been brinksmanship is because in the year 2000, which was the first presidential election I voted in, the Supreme Court stole the election for the guy that didn't win. George W. Bush didn't win the popular vote, which meant he shouldn't have won the Electoral College in Florida. So he just shouldn't have won the election. The Supreme Court started out the century stealing elections for their candidate.
Yes.
and building the infrastructure because they were mad at the quote unquote diverse multicultural 90s. And we don't understand that the first decade, we don't get Barack till the end of the first decade of the 21st century. The first decade of the 21st century is
Yeah.
is coming after Muslim folks via war and
Yeah.
fighting back against the perceived gains from 68 to the year 2000. Right.
Yeah.
And so we have to be more historically grounded here. So, and also begin to listen when people are like, we keep saying that because they have been on a pathway to reclaim the 21st century as the white century, right?
Yeah.
And to roll back the like last half century of the 20th century, which apparently they experienced as a horror show. And so they have taken over the courts. They have installed these folks in government. They have installed a dude that none of them respects and all of them thinks is incompetent, but they are willing, like, they are willing to do it in order to retain power for themselves. And when I listen to some of my comrades on the left who act as though the only project we have, to your point, is to build the left, I am like,
Yeah.
you will get crushed because you aren't looking at the enemy. The enemy is not, I know what King said. I know that King said that centrist people were the enemy. I got it.
Yeah.
And in certain conditions, they can't be. But King also said that in 63. He wasn't saying that in 67 and 68. Right? Not by the time he really went up against the government. The more radical King got, he wasn't talking about white centrists in the South as being the problem. He was saying, and so I am like, we also lock people in time and then use their arguments for our own, to sort of support these positions that we want to take.
It becomes like statistics. It's just like,
yeah, we just tell whatever story we want. And I'm like, look, I want better organizing conditions. But some of the reasons some of us have been sounding the alarm for so long is because once we all got shocked into realizing that Trump could win, we were, and look, that's also a reaction. Whiteness as a project cannot sustain. I think many white people, not all, I think many white people go to bed at night when Black people are running shit and they feel deeply unsettled, like deeply unrestful, at a psychic level, because the whole world has been built to tell them that they run things. And the minute that looks different, they cannot deal. And they become fragile, not like flowers or whatever, but like a bomb. And so one of the reasons, because here's the other,
that was a bar.
Yeah, that's Frida Kahlo, not fragile like flowers. Fragile like a bomb. Yes.
Fragile like a bomb. Yes.
Fragile like a bomb. And I am like, look, here's the other thing that I want folks to think about in terms of stakes. Whoever wins in November, they're going to come after Black people and they're going to come after women. They're going to come hard for Black women. In the same way that they came, look, the people that are telling me that, Claudine Gay is telling me that, Sonia Massey is telling me that. They're telling me that you could be running Harvard and you aren't safe. They could tell me that you are just in your kitchen trying to boil a pot of water and you aren't safe as a Black woman, because how dare she think she could, right? And see, white women mistake this in 2016. They thought they could play nice with white supremacy and cozy up to these white boys that they live with and be okay. And the mere possibility of Hillary Clinton winning the popular vote and getting as close to the presidency as she did meant that they reacted by taking, like, these white boys have taken away the white girls' abortion rights, not just the Black women.
I was like, do you know that white girls have abortions? Like country white girls, like country white girls.
Yeah, and also rich white girls in private doctors' offices. That's
what I'm saying.
Yeah, they are all. Yes, like, they are all having. Yes, they are all having the.
Kinlan needs an abortion too.
Yes. They are all having the reproductive care that we all might need at any given time. And I am like, at the point that they are coming after these white women like this, just for the mere possibility of Hillary Clinton, who didn't even win, What
Yeah.
do you think they're going to do to Black women? How do you think that they're going to use the powers of the government to decimate us, right? To come after all of the things that we hold dear. It's not just going to be, it's going to be random acts of violence. It's going to be, more jailing of Black women who are putting their kids in school districts outside of the school districts where they live. It's going to be more draconian cuts to Social Security and the social safety net, right?
Yep.
It's going to
Yes.
be more sterilizations, against folks' will, like all, and that's just the brute force. That's not the like all these Black girls in corporate who hate their jobs because they're being undermined by white girls every day. That shit is gonna get worse just
Yeah,
because
yeah,
people are
yeah.
gonna backlash. Whether if
In
Kamala,
as close as they can. That's how we back.
yeah, yeah,
That's
exactly.
how it always
They're
plays out.
they're gonna go into the voting booth. The white girls, the liberal white girls, and the ones that are upset with Trump, they're gonna go into the voting booth. They're gonna vote for Kamala, and then they're gonna come back and be terrible to the Black girls they work with, and they're gonna work out all their anxiety about not being first on all those Black girls, and they're gonna actively start to undermine them. And I'm look, I got a call from a colleague last week talking about white girls triangulating power in the place where she works, and I was like, right. And I bet you all of them are going
Yeah.
to go vote for Kamala. And
Well,
then
and
they're,
that's that big piece, right? I keep talking about, like and Grace said this, like we have to transform ourselves to transform the world. And I'm like,
yeah,
it really is for each of us, right? Whoever we're facing as our oppressor, so
yeah,
much of that is living inside of us. And that's what's lashing out at each other, right? So the way
yeah,
I'm like, how? But as a woman, how could you? Well, the part of me that is patriarchal is going to lash out. The part of me that is supremacist is going to lash out. These things will lash out. And so I see that, I'm like, that's what
yeah,
we do. And that's why we're
yeah,
always divisible, right?
yeah,
We are so reactionary and divisible. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves like, well, what the hell happened? And I think that's been a big part for me of how I want to participate this time is I'm like, last time I was just like, there's no way Trump could win. Like, it's just not even a like he's not part of story of grown up things. Like that's a grown up job. Like, well, I don't know. Like it just was like it was not, I literally was just like, I don't watch polls. I'm an artist, but I'm like, it wasn't possible. And this time I'm like, let me act like it is possible that he could win. And let me act like it's possible that Project 2025 is what the people who are the power behind him actually want to implement. And let me act like it's possible because I'm looking around me and all of my rights have been stripped back over these past 4 years, 5 years, 8 years. And the other thing that's really interesting is like, well, people are like, but the parties are the same. The parties are the same. And for me, that's again, whenever we collapse things that are actually distinct for the
yes,
sake of a political point, I think we do a great disservice to ourselves and to those who are coming after us, those who are looking up to us as leaders. Because I'm like, both of these parties are really stressful, right? Like both of these parties are really controlled by money, controlled by capitalism. And I'm like, they're not moving us in the direction we want to go in. So, I'm like, I want to challenge the two-party system. I want to challenge the structures. And I'm like, and there is organizing that actually challenges these structures. So there's organizing that would allow us to have ranked voting, right?
mm-hmm.
There's organizing to abolish the electoral college. There's
Yes,
organizing to gain political power at local levels that actually builds up something strong. I'm like, I want to see people who show up and are like, the one move we can make is to throw away a vote in this election instead of the one move we can make is to organize all the time to actually change the structure, which is the
yeah,
more mundane, less sexy. No one's looking at you, 2 months after an election when you're like, okay, ranked voter. I'm like, that's what we need. I was like, then you would actually have me, right?
yeah,
Then we could actually talk. But I'm like, you're not, to me, you don't build a party under crisis pressure. That feels like it's about something else. And I'm like, again, not my business, right? My
yeah,
business is of the people who can win, who can I organize? Of the people who can win, who wants to take away all my power? Of the people who can win, blah, blah, blah. And of the people
that's
who
a great
can
question.
win in this moment, right?
Yeah,
I'm like, and this is why, I think earlier I spoke about that humility piece.
yeah,
I
want to uplift. I'm in relationship with a lot of organizers, a lot of
Yeah.
the most radical people I know, people who are like so
Yeah.
radical, they're like, I'm not on Instagram. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't come talk to you because I don't have an account. You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yes.
snap. Okay. Okay. Like, let me,
Yeah. Yeah.
let me stop. Right. I'm like, yes. Okay. So I'm talking to folks like that, and they're like, I am humble enough to go door knock for this Harris Walls campaign right now because I recognize that the communities that I serve are in these conditions, and this is the best possible move to create more possibility for them to organize and for them to
Yeah.
fight. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that to me is like I have to learn from it, right? Because for me,
Mhm.
I love the thrill of being like, yeah, I just love the thrill of righteousness. I'm a Virgo, I'm an oldest child.
Mm.
I love to know that I'm right and then be like, here's the most righteous space. I don't think that there's a most righteous space right now. I think what there is a most humble space. And the most
Yeah.
humble space is, for me, it's always led by organizers. So I keep
Mm.
looking at folks and being like, okay, across the spectrum of the left, you know, again, what you're just saying about those white women, I was like, across the spectrum of the left, right?
Yeah.
We need a structure that can handle those white women, that can
Yeah.
orient to those white women, that can orient
Yes.
towards Black men who are,
Oh my God.
also, right, terrified of Black women's power and
Yes.
really struggling with reorienting to their place in this moment of patriarchy in history and community, right?
I
I'm
mean,
like, I
that's,
see you so struggling so hard that you'll vote against every interest you have in order to what maintain this tiny little promise of a thread of patriarchy of over power over. So I'm
yeah.
like, we need something that's big enough to hold all of that, and and who knows if we'll get it right. Where
Yeah.
to me, I'm like, oh, we might, we
I mean,
might,
you have a
yeah.
very generous read of those brothers. I have no patience for them whatsoever.
It's because I
But
mostly don't date men. Like I,
yes.
I occasionally will date a man, but I think that I have a softer place because I'm like, I don't have a baby daddy. I don't have any, I don't have to have, I'm not dating cis men for the most part. I have
Right.
one really special one who stands above the rest. But, like
Yeah.
most of the folks I date are women. Most of the folks I care about are women. And
Yeah.
most of the folks I spend my time talking to are like radical
Wo-
feminist women. So
Yeah.
it's, like when I hear, it's basically, I hear about it, in my book, I talked about this idea of writing gender and what relinquishing patriarchy means. And
Mm.
I'm like, there's something so broken inside of patriarchy, and I hold a gentle place for that. But yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say the humility for me is because I'm just like regular Southern Black girl that's like, yeah, and so, we vote and we vote for the Black girl and we vote Democratic because of course we don't vote Republican in this
Mhm.
era, right? And so in my local elections, I live in a blue state. I live in a Democratic town. So I vote to the left of the Democrats, right? Because
Yeah.
organizers have taught me that this is what you
Yes.
do, right? So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, if I want to actually see this shift at the local level, then I've got to vote more progressive when I have the opportunity. So I vote
Yes.
more progressive in my local races. I voted uncommitted this summer. And as
Mhm.
I said the other day, I've only voted for Joe Biden one of the three times I've had an opportunity to vote for him. And that was the 2020 general. I didn't vote for him in the 2020 primary. I didn't
Right.
vote for him in the 2024 primary. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I think we have to do is give people, like, which is very hard because of the medium we have to talk to each other, is giving people the the benefit of context. I too, I listen to you, I read you, I listen to organizers, many of the ones that
Yeah.
you are in community with, because I am
Yeah.
very clear that we have to build a world beyond this moment. And I'm a radical Black feminist. I don't believe in the US nation state project, but I
Mhm.
do believe that Black girls get to live at the level of their possibility. And I'm going to say a thing very
Mm.
directly without a lot of preamble. I
Okay.
think I think Kamala is organizable. I think she can be
Uh-huh.
organized. I
Uh-huh.
don't know that I don't, like, because based upon what I know and who I think is talking to her, and
Mhm.
you know, I don't think that she's not going to be radical because the presidency is not where revolutions happen. But my sense is that it's just not, and it's absurd that we think that it is, right? And therefore, because the presidency isn't where revolutions happen, the presidency is not the marker of my commitment to revolution, right? Like
Uh-huh.
it is,
Uh-huh.
that is the thing that I care a lot about, is like the president, me voting for the president is me saying, look, I'll give an example. I think Joe Biden became a much more progressive president than he intended to be. And one
Mm.
of the ways I look, but before October 7th of last year, Joe Biden could have made a credible case that he was a solid Democrat and not a centrist Democrat. The money
Ah.
that they gave in those, the actual stimulus checks that the Democrats passed, the bigger ones that came out after the quote unquote Trump stimmies that
Yes.
brought 50% of children out of poverty because families were getting $250 per child and more if the baby was under 3. And if you know working class Black families, you know that money made a difference, right? My $80,000 student loan tab that I still had after 13 years of paying student loans is gone, right? Because of reformations to that system. One of my friends who doesn't make a lot of money and who had $200,000 in student loans, that shit is wiped away, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of the Black people who were victimized by those for-profit college scams, including Trump University, who had
Mm-hmm.
all of those student loan funds, all of that student loan tab wiped away. Like that's real material, the sort of the work on infrastructure and climate change that we'll see roll out over the next few years. Yes, we deserve so much more. But I heard Ashley Woodard Henderson on your
Oh
podcast
yeah.
saying to you, and Ashley's also been a person I got to talk to earlier in the year when she was at Rutgers,
Yeah.
and we chatted a little bit. And I heard her saying, like, we don't know how to win on the left. So I'm like, when you had the student loan tab thing, is because the left seeded the idea that the Democrats ought to forgive student loans. And then you had Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders pushing for that stuff. And even when they lost the campaign, the guys that get in ultimately end up doing it because the left created a groundswell of support for it to happen. That is how you
Right.
want movements
Right.
to work. You don't always get the mascot for your movement that you want, but what you do get to do is seed ideas that you then build a groundswell for, that then make some of those things possible, even in conditions that you didn't think would lead to it. And that's
Uh-huh.
all I mean. And that is a really important reflection of the thing you said, which nothing sends me through a roof more, particularly as a professor and a thinker and a writer, than watching people who I know are deeply well read and brilliant, saying that there is no difference between the parties, saying that there is no difference in this moment in history, saying that all is slavery and all is capitalism and there's nothing to hope for. And what I want to say in my crunkest self is that that is deeply unrigorous and untrue. And because it is, and because the stakes of taking positions like that are so high, I also think saying that shit is deeply unloving, right? You don't have to agree with Ida B. Wells said the Democrats and the Republicans weren't shit in 1885. Okay.
Yes.
Like, we are not the first generation of people to know that shit. And yet Ida B. Wells
Yes.
ran for office on the Republic, when Black people were Republicans. Years after she said that, she ran for state office as a Republican. They held the folks we hold up, they held complexity. She knew the two-party system didn't serve Black people well. It wasn't
Right.
I'm just.
Yeah, I really appreciate this, Brittney, because a lot of how I've been like organizing it inside my, I have to like figure it out in my head. And a lot of it has been like elections are what you move against and organizing is what you move for, right? That I'm like, when I'm organizing, I'm moving towards the vision of the world that I want to see. I'm building community. I'm building ideas. I'm generating practice. I'm getting into let's build a garden. But
Yeah.
like Octavia said, don't just build a garden without keeping an eye on the fascists because they will come take your garden and they'll take your kids and take everything else. So I'm building the garden with my eye back. I'm doing the whole thing. But I'm like my visionary space is in all the community I build. And then my electoral space is where I say, what do I want to hold the line against? And what can I hold the line against? And I think we are in, the other thing I keep telling people is I'm like, if you can't do it, I'm not asking you to do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm like, if you're like, I cannot do that. I'm like, I keep saying that. I'm like, people have lost family, their whole entire
Yes.
family. I'm not saying go
Yes.
vote for someone who
Correct.
still is saying, I want to be the most lethal force in the world to do more
Oh
of
my
that.
God.
No, if you
Please stop
can't
saying
do
it,
it,
girl.
girl, I mean, like
Please don't
somebody
do it. And also don't say it.
don't do it.
You
Don't
do
I know.
it.
I'm always
Just
like, I don't care what you say. If you stop killing everybody, you
yeah,
can call
yeah,
yourself
just
lethal. Like lethal would be cute if you weren't killing everybody. But anyway, I'm like, I'm like, if you are in a place of I cannot do it, I'm like, don't do it. Right. What we're talking about is not about your personal feelings and your personal moves. What I'm talking about is on an organizing level. What are we moving masses of people to do? And I
yeah.
have people in my life who are like, I can't do the vote, but I'm still going to do the voter organizing. Like I literally
Mm,
have people who are like,
mm,
I'm walking the thread like this. I'm
yeah.
walking the thread
In the
like
thread
that.
like that.
And so the thing, I want to ask you this question, which is,
Yeah.
I think coming clear, but what do you see as right action in this
Hmm.
moment?
Yeah. So what I have said, because I'm on a campus with a lot of or organizing with Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim colleagues, I will never ask them to vote for a candidate on any side that is actively supporting, materially supporting a genocide.
Yeah.
I won't do it. I think that is immoral and wrong.
Yeah.
Um, at the same time,
Yeah.
I have been a part of the organizing that Win with Black Women has been doing since 2020. I was
Yeah.
on one of the very first phone calls. And what I
Yeah.
know is that those Black women have not just been organizing for the presidency and the vice presidency, they have been organizing in races up and down the ballot over
Yeah.
all 4 of these years. Every Sunday night, any Black
Yeah.
woman who has run in a local race, local mayors of small cities, Black women running at the state level for all kinds of offices have shown up to that call and made their pitch to those Black women voter organizers to ask for money. Those Black women have been building power up and down the ballot all throughout the country as a way
Yeah.
to say that if we want to change conditions, this is how we do it. And they have
Yes.
spanned the scope of, more progressive to more moderate, right?
Yeah.
And so I think right action for me, right action for the
Yeah.
communities I feel accountable to is that I'm going to vote and I'm going to vote. And look, I think we have a moral responsibility to stop a fascist. And I don't think that the argument is about saving the empire because ultimately this empire will not be saved. Right? Don't save it. It don't want to.
Unsavable.
That
They
in
don't
the
want to
words
be
of
saved.
saved, in the words of Project
That's a
Pat,
great.
don't save her. She don't want to be
You don't
saved.
want to be
She
saved.
don't want to be saved. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there are there are critical look, but there's brute force and monsters
Mhm.
and people who come into office and ban Muslims when they're trying to fly in at the airport, which is the
Yep.
first thing that Trump did, and that
Very true.
reveled in taking babies who were nursing from their parents and putting them in cages. And I'm
Yep.
not look, and the Biden administration's immigration policy is not better, and that immigration bill was absolute trash. And like
Basura.
we can say that. And at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm like, but there's real material conditions that get worse on day one for our people that they cannot survive. And my granny and my great granny and my mama, rest her soul, did not work every day and show me how to navigate crazy, terrible white people in their lives for me to just give the whole store away because I'm mad that I don't have the better options than I deserve. Black people do deserve better options. We all
Mm.
deserve better options than a two-party system. But there is something sacred to me about, there's something very Black to me about the way that we take shitty options and make possibility. And
Yeah.
that is what a vote does. And I don't know that I wouldn't describe Kamala as a shitty option in the sense that I don't like to talk about Black women in that way. And I don't know that I want to talk
Period.
about cis like that. But I want to
Yeah.
think structurally that I know we deserve more. And at the same time, it doesn't feel morally repugnant to me to go into a voting booth and say that I care about schools, I care about climate change, I care about the tax structure. I care about the fact that this woman is saying that she wants to stop taxing people's tips. Now, what we should be having is a universal basic income conversation, but we ain't at that conversation nationally. So the least
That's
we
what
could
our
do,
organizing has to do, right?
that's right. But at least we could stop taxing folks' tips who work these
Yeah.
jobs, right? Like
Yes.
that's, that's
Yeah,
real
yeah,
money in the pocket if we don't do that. Just as one
yeah. Hmm.
example, right? Um, and there's and if we build more housing and if we make housing more affordable and if we give people means to actually build families, right, then part of
Yeah.
what that means is that maybe we could come back together and live in communities together again, and we wouldn't just spend all our time yelling at each other on the internet. And so there's like some structural conditions.
Yeah.
She doesn't have that vision for what housing can do, but we have the vision for worlds where when Black women and Black femmes have houses in communities, those communities are healthier. And so if we get just as an example, if we get more Black folks and brown folks who are able to like build relationships in communities because they have stable housing, of course that's going to make a difference for our organizing and for our schools, right? Because
Yeah.
it's more stable conditions. And so I'm trying to think about those things broadly. And I will say that
Yeah.
I think that we get to like, look, I maybe it's fucked up. It probably, I mean, I feel like there's no morally unfucked position here. Like I'm a Black person living in America, and I do think that I get to use my vote in ways that I think make conditions at the very least stable or less unstable for Black folks in America. And I have found myself scratching my head at the all of a sudden interest that some folk on social media have about US foreign policy, because those of us
Yeah.
who have thought about it for a long time know that like this isn't the only genocide happening in the world right now.
Right
This
now.
The US has been funding and turning a blind eye to genocides around the world pretty much for the whole of our lifetimes. There is a moment where that ought to change, and we're in a moment where that can change. But this sudden sanctimony about like this is the issue,
Mhm.
I it's not that it, I mean, it clearly Palestinian folks have infinite value and matter and don't deserve to be blown off the planet because of madman Netanyahu and his foolishness and our own US security interests. So I'm not trying to minimize, but I don't know how to
Uh-huh.
say that in a world where we have to make hard choices,
Yeah.
like I am going to choose my aunties and my grannies here in the same way that I think that my Arab, Muslim, and Palestinian folk are choosing their people, right? And I,
Right.
so,
Right. Right. Right.
so I think I want to invite people to, in honor of Bernice Johnson Reagan, to go read her essay "Coalition Politics: Turning the Century,"
Yeah.
which is
I
a
think that'd be
classic,
great.
piece, because part of what she says there is like we come into these coalitions looking for home, and baby, it ain't home, it's a coalition. We have some stuff we agree about, and we have some stuff that we break apart on. And if we are really about the work of doing this thing, then we're going to have to be able to exist with each other through the hard parts, right? And
Uh-huh.
Kim Crenshaw says a similar thing in the intersectionality essays, where she says races and genders are coalitions, right? Like she
Uh-huh.
is like races are coalitions between a bunch of Black folks of different genders trying to sustain that project, right? And genders are coalitions of folks
Mhm.
across a bunch of races trying to figure out where the places that we can coexist together are. And that's why all these categories always feel so fraught, because we're always trying to
Yeah.
find shared ground.
I
Um,
do. I think that one of the things I keep talking about is political home. That I'm like, if you have political home, you won't get confused by looking at the electoral process as a place to find that, or at a political
yeah,
party as a place to find that, because
yeah,
you're like, oh, I have political home. The other thing I really appreciate this point you're saying about like it's not like, because the whole point is trying to drive this wedge and say it's this versus that, and there's only one way to be in solidarity with that, with anti-genocide movement and with pro-Palestine. And I'm like, as someone who I'm like, I wasn't planning to drop everything last October and have this become the center of my life, but I did because it was clearly the right thing to do and because I had the capacity to do it. And that's one of the things I feel like I'm voting for right now is I'm like, how do I vote and organize the vote to protect my capacity to organize for anything else? And so I'm like, if because it already feels like whack-a-mole, both on an emotional level, on an economic level. I moved to North Carolina in 2021, and so I'm just like, I can really feel. I'm like if you're living in the South, there's certain places where if you're living, you can really feel these things are changing rapidly. And when they change, it happens so fast. You're like, wait, there's a mask ban. Wait, we can't have abortion. Like it's happening so fast. I'm like, and I'm trying to see all that and still keep my eyes on how do we actually free Palestine? What does it actually look like? And part of what is so exciting to me about that is that it's a global movement. It's a global movement. And all the Palestinian people I talk to are like, this thing has been going on for a very long time. We're not going to suddenly resolve it within the next month necessarily, but we do keep putting pressure. So one of the right actions I keep looking at is like, how do I support the uncommitted movement and how do I support the actions that are happening in that space that use this window of pressure? And I just saw Sister Samantha Rise was saying like, even if you've already figured out what your vote is going to be, still sign the petition for no arms embargo, no vote, or no ceasefire,
Mm-hmm.
no vote. Still sign those things because they don't actually know who's made up their mind and don't know. They just know a ton of people are willing to like sign up and be like, nah, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, that's the thing I keep saying is I'm like, we can do multiple things at the same
At the same
time.
time.
And, you know, I've always done multiple things at the same time. I'm always trying to figure out how to make a way out of no way. And
Yeah.
so I really appreciate you bringing that piece on because it has been so disturbing to me to see, you know, in the same way that I'm like in 2020, we wouldn't have said to everyone, like, make a decision that only serves Black people and that actually moves against everyone else. No one would
Oh,
say that.
say that.
I don't actually hear that from the Palestinian organizers that I
No.
work with. And so that's the other thing is I keep having to remind myself to even check who's bringing what kind of questions to me because I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, the organizers I speak to are not talking about that. AROC is launching a really brilliant effort. I think that's going to be a brilliant
Mm,
effort that's really
mm,
talking about how do we track all the people, all the candidates who are moving against genocide around the country and support those at the local level that are down ballot. And
I love
I'm
that.
like, that's, you know, I was like,
Yes.
there's actually a lot of options for right now,
Yeah.
but the powers that be want us to divide, thinking that there's only two and that there's one way to move, right?
Yeah.
So the final thing I want to say, I want to ask you is
Yeah.
what are you practicing to protect your beliefs in this time?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a great question. Um,
Mhm.
two things. One, I have committed to the discipline of not arguing with people on the internet. And I'm really
How's that
like
going?
not great every day, but every day I just re up and try again, right?
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
was saying it to a friend, and then my ancestors are fairly loud with me these days, and even my ancestors were like, "Yeah, like be super disciplined in this moment about what you say online because you're giving your energy in spaces that don't deserve it, right? In other Which is to say that folks are not moving in good faith always,
Mhm.
and so that's first, is to be super careful. And I think
Yeah.
um also, I am really trying to remember. So I have been embroiled in the whole, like, my group chats have been popping about the whole Audre Lorde, June Jordan split about
Oh
Palestine and all
yeah.
of that and
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
the,
yeah.
and we've been like all reading it and thinking about it and talking about it in
Mhm.
Alexis's fabulous new book. And the thing that I think about
Mhm.
is, and have been asking my friends, is what is the marker of our Black feminist commitments to each other? Is our relationship to each other or our political stance in any given moment, right? And
Mhm.
I land at the relationships. I think when I look at the Black feminist life I'm living and that I want to continue to live in, what I want is to have the relationships that sustain me, even if I'm in evolution on a position, even if I'm trying to get to a different
Yeah.
place. I want
Yeah.
things that can hold me. And that means that we've got to so, which is to say, part of the reason I want to stop arguing with people on the internet is because I want to stop being at odds with real people and treating them unkindly because they have offended my ego, right? Or my sense of myself as a person who, because I find myself being like, who do you know, who the fuck are you talking to? I've been doing this work. Like, what are
Yeah,
you
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
And asking
Yeah.
for context. And it's like, I don't want to have to do that with folks
Yeah.
because I think that what we deserve, all of us right now, I think what all of us need, as counterintuitive as it is more gentleness, more mercy, and not just more grace. Grace is a term we really love because we're like, I'm going to extend grace, right? But
Yeah.
that assumes that we're correct and other people, we can be magnanimous. Mercy assumes that I can be merciful because I am often frequently in need of other people's mercy, right? It to me is the more humble position. And I don't know that I'm always able to sustain that, but it is the place where I want to be. And so back and forths in platforms that were built to gin up our outrage and not our connection is like not the thing. And the last thing I'm doing is I am sewing and crocheting.
Oh, yes.
I was never a crafter. I've always been just an in your head kind of girl.
Yeah.
And last year I happened upon crochet because I was waiting for a sewing class to open up and I totally love it. And so I'm doing both things and I'm doing them as a way to, my grandmother was an amazing sewist and used to sew me a suit of clothes every year.
Yeah.
Um, and my mom and my aunties were like, we don't do that, we buy our clothes. And so so
Yeah.
I'm like reclaiming these sort of ancestral practices, not only because they are a way to focus the mind away from some of the bullshit and
Yeah.
put me in my body differently, but also because I'm like, look, if we end up in the post nation tomorrow and we don't have no social services, I can make sourdough, I can make us some clothes.
Listen,
Okay.
I talk about this all the time. I'm like, please have some tangible skills. Please have skills that are not pontification or commenting. Please, even for myself, I'm just like, I'm a bomb ass facilitator, but like, I want some skills that are not like, I just want, I'm like, I'm really like, I need someone to help me with my gardening because I'm like, I think my tangible thing is supposed to be like being an herbalist or something. Anyway, we'll
Yeah.
see, but I'm struggling. My biggest thing is like packing a go bag and telling everyone how to pack a go bag. That's what I'm doing all the
Mm.
time. But I love the crocheting because you can't crochet and be on the internet. I keep trying to come up with stuff like that. So I'm like been doodling.
Yeah.
I've been doing all this different stuff to just be like, what can I do so that even if I'm sitting and watching TV, I'm like not doing that and on the internet. Like I'm like, I just whatever's happening in this space, I have to be so protective because this space is not for us by us, right? Like we
Yeah.
make a way,
Yeah.
but we make a way through this, but I have to constantly be like, it's a mandala practice. Like I am building
Mm-hmm.
something in this, and at any
Mm-hmm.
moment someone can wipe it away. And
Yeah.
I have to let it go as it comes in this
Yeah.
space, but then I really limit myself in what I do here. And then yeah, I really ask myself all the question like who's benefiting from how I'm spending my time and my attention right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, like even when I'm like, oh, I have a really bomb comment or something brilliant I could say to someone, I'm like, write it for yourself, write it in a piece, write it in a poem, write it somewhere
Mm-hmm.
else, right? Like
Yeah.
claim that that person maybe was a prompt for you, but you can claim that. And I see so many people, I'm like, you would be a great writer. You should go publish something. You got a lot to say. Like, you know what I'm saying? You got a lot to say, but go work with the editor and like get it together and like write,
Together.
make it a book, right? Or something
Yeah.
else. So I think all of that, and then, you know, for me, yeah, I keep really trying to release my grief. So
Yeah.
I'm like, because I'm like the grief, first of all, so many people I'm grieving for and with don't have any time or capacity or space to grieve. And so I'm
Mm.
really trying to take my practice as like being in the practice of collective grief and like tapping into collective grief and
Mm.
letting my body be one of the bodies that it moves through. And that
Mm.
really helps me because I'm like, you can't tell me that I don't love everyone who I love. Like, there's nothing I'm ever going to say on the internet. There's nothing I'm ever going to write. There's no move ever going to do that's actually going to say that I don't love who I love. I know I love who I love. So
Yeah.
that also helps me, right? I'm like, the time that I spend offline giving myself to love, that
Yeah.
time is incredibly precious to me.
Yeah.
And it really helps me, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I adore you. This was so generative. And you're just so brilliant constantly.
I appreciate you,
And I'm
Sam.
so grateful for you and the brave energy. Like you've been bringing really big boss energy
Oh,
to
thank
what you're
you.
standing in. And it's so necessary. Like it's been really bright, shining light for me to witness that.
Mm. Appreciate you.
And for folks who are tuning into this, send it to a friend, send it to people in your life who are still trying to figure this all out. So much respect, and I hope you have a
Mm.
great Monday night.
Thank you. Just thank you for everything, Adrian. Thank you so much for just being our guide to the next world. You very much are that. And you always help me to think about where I want to be. And also, I'm also like, how did this girl get here? Why does she's all like, you arrive and then I show up and I'm like, she was already there. And it's wonderful because it's an affirmation that I'm moving in the right direction. And so I deeply appreciate it.
Yay. Yeah, we're heading the right way. As long as we're heading there together, I think we're heading the right way.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Good night, everyone. Love y'all.
I told everybody, oh, never felt this feeling before. Oh, this is different. It's a love that doesn't need any cure. I wasn't ready, but your love has got me feeling so sure.